Hey everyone, and welcome to the final part of our Cathedral build for World of Warcraft. Now, this took a whole lot longer than I thought it was going to be, and hopefully as we go through the build series and enter some different themes, I won't be tackling such a large and complicated shape/structure, just so that we can kind of go through your guys' suggestions as quickly as possible. These series... This one was more for me because eventually I do want to make a Stormwind park, and in doing so, I thought maybe taking care of the cathedral this early would be a good idea so that I could potentially save time in that series once I get to it. But right now, I cannot upload this to the Steam Workshop, and the main reason behind that is the fact that it's a 12,000 piece item. Now, I could break that up into 6 different items and figure out a way to easily kind of snap them together like a puzzle piece, but I'm not going to do that unless you guys really want to have this item on the workshop for your access. So if you guys want that, go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. But unless you guys say otherwise, I'm not going to be bothering trying to trim the fat on this one. It's just mainly going to be for me, and hopefully you guys can get some inspiration and learning some building techniques out of this whole process that we went to. We're going to be starting the episode here with another spire, and using pretty much the similar technique as last time, though I have kind of optimized our methodology on these extra little bits sticking out from the tower itself, and I can actually skip over putting a skin over the scaffolding and go straight into just putting down the stonework in pieces, which is actually a huge time saver, and also saves on block count because there's still a lot of pieces that I could trim out of the previous build just in the skin wrapping of the item. And I want to do that eventually, maybe if you guys, again, want this thing uploaded to the workshop. Also, the cathedral will be done this episode. Again, we do want to keep these a little bit shorter in the future. But what we're doing now is just simply working on the flanges. And, again, I can't stress the word flange enough in the past 2 episodes because we've just been working on those seams for hours upon hours. Other than that, it's a pretty straightforward building besides these spires and tower builds. In fact, we end up going through and fixing some of the earlier spires, the first episode ones, just to make it match the rest of the building and make it look a little bit more uniform. So we'll go ahead and add these little pieces. It's relatively quick to make these walls at this point, just because all I'm doing is drawing a vertical line, getting those roughly in the shape of the scaffolding, and then copy and paste them along to make solid kind of walled structures. And to get the different angles, I'm slowly getting a little bit more comfortable with just slowly adjusting the angle as we go so that we can get a nice, smooth, solid transition across the whole area. Now, the spires on these larger kind of wings of the cathedral, these are the final main ones that's going to follow the back half of the building. They are different than the front ones. They are different from the main centralized spire, and they do have one window kind of just centralized on the upper section right below the roof line, and it has some extra detailing above that. And we'll be quickly throwing together just the corner. As always, when you're working in a symmetrical fashion in a square, you just have to do one corner and one side. And generally what that would do is allow you to copy it over a couple times just to save you as much time as possible. You're in Planet Coaster, I feel like you're not so much fighting the difficulty in the build, you're more or less fighting time. If you don't have a lot of time, you can't really do complicated builds because just with the amount of freedom this game offers with the building placement and the rotational tools and things like that, if you want things to be perfect and aligned and looking really clean, time is kind of your enemy when it comes to Planet Coaster. as I've kind of slowly discovered going through the alphas and betas, it's just kind of a big time sink. And anything you can do to mitigate that is ideal. So, trying to get these pieces nice and flush and at the right angle so that we can easily copy and paste these things around. Again, these are kind of colored a little bit lighter than the base walls of the cathedral. And the cathedral in World of Warcraft, they actually use much larger stones than what we're doing here. And it's kind of a shame that there's not a thicker stone block choice in Planet Coaster. They went with a very realistic style, which is great, and really I think that's more versatile in the long term. But for these specialized builds, if I really wanted to capture the look of Warcraft in Warcraft 3, I would have to probably make a custom tile set, but that also increases your block count, and then that creates lag, and so you try to minimize that by simply using as many as the default wall pieces as possible, because you really want to keep that block count low in the long term. And especially if I do end up expanding this park to incorporate all of Stormwind, and really if I do that, I really want to try and make the pre-Cataclysm Stormwind, so you know the whole Druid district would still be there, and that, you know, a cliffside at that point. So the spire on these pieces, they are a little unique. They have kind of an octagonal windowed spire, pretty normal like a castle spire, and then a peaked roof like everywhere else. And really, this one, I wanted to be a little bit fancier than the previous version. And so what I'm doing here is I'm trying to incorporate a spine that kind of offsets just a little bit on the way up, and that's going to add a little bit of a detail going up the corner of this spire. The problem is, you know, we don't really have a block small enough to continue that theming all the way up, so there is a point where I have to kind of abandon it and just settle with doing the normal spire layout, though adding a additional piece slightly offsetting the rest of the top adds basically continues a shadow line up in the upper sections of the spire. So it does still look pretty good, and I was pretty happy with how it turns out, and it being flush with the roof line. At this point, the spires are placed on either side of the center one, and now we're just adding the base roof shape. And it's kind of funny in World of Warcraft, the roof lines, they're very, they kind of bell out. So they start kind of steep, and then as they go, they get flatter as you get away from the main spine. And I think that's just kind of the art style of World of Warcraft, Warcraft 3. And I think it's just to kind of stylize and maybe break away from the standard mold. There is one wing to the cathedral in Stormwind, so, you know, unlike most cathedrals where they are generally a cross-like structure, this one only has a right wing to it, and at the end of this wing, we'll be building a rosary, and a rosary window are generally very nice stonework structures. They're very complicated to make in real life, but luckily in Planet Coaster, the one that we make, I think, turned out really well and pretty straightforward in the long run. Now, we're going to keep that wide foundation along a lot of the sides and corners, but end up on the ends here kind of melding them away. And that kind of provides a little bit of a break, and it also provides a little bit more of an interesting detail in layering as you go kind of near the end of the building in both directions. I was going to do a little bit more of a custom roof there. I didn't really have the tile set to make that fit. Here is the rosary window from the other wing. It took a while to build and come up with a detail, and in fact this detail just feels a little too much for this side of the cathedral. Now, I think that just has to do with the building shape here and how is that the nave apse. Nave. I don't quite remember the terminology for the final little half circle altar ending for the cathedral. It's been quite a while since I've studied just their vocabulary when it comes to these structures, but it just doesn't fit with that much weight to it. It feels like too much detail. It's overbearing, I think, on the rest of the structure. So here in a second, I'll go back in and remove a lot of that and just have the rosary window, some nice, more clean lines through here, and that'll be it for the backside. And so luckily, beyond the spires, the rest of the structure is pretty standard and pretty normal when it comes to a cathedral beyond the flying buttresses. It just, again, using normal buttressing instead of the one that provides a little bit more space and air kind of along the walls to make it feel even more wide and commanding. Here is us deleting all that detailing. But the rosary windows just simply made out of some of the simple small arch windows, rotated around. Did use a variety just so we can get some different textures in there. And then threw in a dark piece in the center just to make it look a little bit more grounded along there. Small little foundation along this side just as a little extra piece of layering. And then we'll go ahead, move into the real time. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this build process of the cathedral from Stormwind. Alright, here we are with the whole cathedral laid out. You can see we ended up adding the nice pointy spires to the front here. In fact, I even also went over these kind of buttressing with some of the stone to make that match the back ones. And it also brings that gray up through the whole spire on the front. And I think that was a much needed little detail in there. And it makes this whole thing really stand out. I really like the colors of the spires. I really love just the cleanness of just all the lines and things like that with this cathedral. I spent a lot of time on this build. Also, I spent a lot of time in this thing in World of Warcraft. So for me, it's a very kind of special spot in my gaming history, as I did play WoW for such a long time as a paladin, that it feels pretty nice to kind of replicate this iconic building in the long run. And hopefully, I'll be able to incorporate it in a Stormwind build eventually. Maybe after we build a couple more parts, I'll build a Stormwind one. So we'll save this for the future for sure. Here is the back rosary window that we've been working on. And the back side is very simple. There's a lot of simple elements to World of Warcraft's kind of art style. Like they have some, crazy, wacky elements. And then it's kind of just balanced out with simple and clean. And I think that's pretty interesting that they do that kind of stuff. This wing here doesn't have any major side windows. In fact, it doesn't even have these clear story windows. I just added them on there because I feel like having some detail would look nice in general. So that's why they are there. Even added a larger window in this section just to fit this small little area along the wall. This is the fancier rosary window here. And it's actually pretty hard to find screenshots of the left and right side of the cathedral without actually having to go into the game myself. I think there is another little tower here in this corner, but I really couldn't see it quite well. And to be honest, I was a little tired of building spires. So yeah, maybe when I go back in and start a proper Stormwind Park, I might add that little one in there. But to me, it's not really going to add anything from the building. It's not going to take anything away if it's not there. It's just a little extra bit of detail that I don't think we're going to go into right now. But overall, it's definitely the largest build that I've done in a single building. It's definitely also, I think, one of the nicest builds. It's very clean, very straightforward. It is a total of 12,072 total objects. Now that is a lot of fat in there that I could trim down. I could probably get it down really maybe 8,000 there might be 4,000 or so objects, but that would still be a 4-part building. So do let me know in the comments if you guys want me to upload this to Steam. It would be a pain to put into your park with just how this thing is laid out. But if you guys are willing to do that, I should be willing to upload it for you guys to use. I do want to show you the interior just because it does look interesting. You can see there's a lot of space. We could put a couple flat rides in here technically and make it usable in a fair setting. You could clean up these interiors a whole lot and get rid of some of these elements, like this wall section here. We can kind of knock that out, expose the innards of this tower itself, and really maybe even clean up the main spire. I think the main spire is a lot of the part count on this one. So I hope you guys enjoyed this build and build process. If you guys have anything that you want me to build from other games or other media, let me know in the comments down below. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more creative goodness such as this. Go ahead and hit that like button so I know you guys like Planet Coaster, and I will see you all in the next episode.